Bloodborne is not a game that holds your hand, not in the difficulty of the gameplay, not even in the story. It drops the player into the game world with very little information to go on, and instead leaves it up to them to explore and experience the gothic setting and take in the lore and story as they see fit, a lot of which can be missed, as most of the story needs to be pieced together through reading descriptions on items or talking to optional NPCs. For a game with such rich lore and story, Bloodborne surprisingly spends zero time on exposition. So it may seem strange to dedicate an episode of Deep Cuts on examining the main world of a video game, but for Bloodborne, it's necessary. Welcome back to another episode of Deep Cuts, a show that examines lore, backstories, and theories in video games. The events of Bloodborne take place in the fictional city of Yharnam, a city renowned for its miracle remedy that's said to cure any illness. Seeking a cure is what attracts our main character to venture to this city, where upon signing a contract, receives a blood transfusion. Upon waking up, the hunter finds that the doctor is nowhere to be found and instead finds a werewolf-like creature called a scourge beast devouring a corpse in the clinic. Yharnam itself is in disarray. The city has been ravaged by a mysterious plague that transforms people into beasts, which its streets are now infested with, along with crazed, demented citizens. But how did all of this happen? What caused all of this? It all started with the Tumerians, an ancient civilization whose ruins lie beneath Yharnam in the catacombs now referred to as the Chalice Dungeons. Among the Tumerians were powerful multi-dimensional beings known as Great Ones. Each Great One was unique and strange. These were beings capable of existing across multiple planes of existence, often described as gods. The queen of the Tumerians was Yharnam, and she was pregnant with the child of a Great One. You see, given each Great One's unique anatomy, reproducing was difficult, so often the Great Ones would use the Tumerians for surrogacy. An in-game item, the Ring of Betrothal, suggests that this was a blood contract, although many of these would end in stillborns or death shortly after birth. The Great Ones would eventually leave this plane and ascend to the Nightmare Realm, though some Great Ones were left behind. As for the Tumerians, it's unclear as to exactly what their fate was, although it's believed that they would fall victim to the Plague of Beasts. Many years later, the ruins of the Tumerians were discovered, along with proof of the existence of the Great Ones. These were discovered by a group of scholars from Byrgenwerth, a school that studied all forms of learning that allowed one to comprehend and perhaps achieve a higher plane of existence through the study of science and astrology. The discovery of the Great Ones only fueled this group's desire for humanity to ascend to their status as essential deities. And along with this discovery was the discovery of the blood of the Great Ones, which they referred to as the Old Blood. This blood was shown to have miraculous healing properties, and some scholars believed that the blood was the key to evolving mankind. This would go on to cause a divide amongst the Byrgenwerth scholars, particularly between two men, a man named Lawrence and the head of the school, Master Willem. Willem advised caution when it came to utilizing the Old Blood, and was even known to quote the phrase, "Fear the Old Blood." Willem instead believed that ascension could be achieved through contact and insight gained through the communion with the Great Ones.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes are yet to open. Fear the old blood.
And Lawrence, well, he had a much different idea. He saw amazing potential in the usage of the Old Blood, so much so that he left Byrgenwerth and would go on to form the Healing Church, an institution that studied the Old Blood and spread its miraculous treatment to the public. The Healing Church in Yharnam would become renowned across the continent and would attract many people to the city seeking cures for their ailments. However, addiction to the blood came easy due to the euphoria that the blood concoction induced, one which few people could resist. The misuse of the Old Blood would ultimately be what caused the townsfolk to transform into monsters, and thus began the Plague of Beasts. As a result, a man named Gurman would go on to form the Hunter's Workshop. Gurman, the first hunter, is the man who would standardize beast hunting methods and pioneered the use of transforming trick weapons in one hand with a firearm in the other. Many other hunters would follow suit. However, Gurman would eventually disappear. With the plague of beasts still on the rise, the Healing Church then opened a workshop of their own to fight the beasts, this time led by a man named Ludwig. As you can see, the Healing Church is kind of at the center of the conflict when it comes to the events of Bloodborne. They have hunters fighting the beasts, yet they also are the ones who caused the Scourge of Beasts in the first place. The Healing Church itself even had internal factions of its own. There were the Hunters of the Healing Church Workshop, a secret group of high-ranking members called the Choir, and another faction called the School of Mensis. Now, both the Choir and the School of Mensis pursued ascension and evolution, though there was a conflict between these two rival factions and their ideals and methodologies were different. The Choir focused on pursuing knowledge and insight gained from communion with the Great Ones. Think of them as the continuation of Willem's philosophy from the School of Bergenworth. They would eventually gain an audience with an unascended left-behind Great One named Abritus. And then there was the School of Mensis. The members of the School of Mensis were more extreme, more fanatical. They would kidnap people, harvest organs, and perform bizarre, blasphemous rituals, symbolized by strange devices they wore on their heads to protect their minds, called Mensis cages. They were led by a man named Mikolash. Now that we have a general idea of the key figures in the world of Bloodborne, let's begin laying everything out which led to the events of the game. Some of the key items in the game story-wise are pieces of umbilical cord. These were the umbilical cords of Great Ones, relics that could be used in rituals to establish contact with Great Ones. There are 3 characters in Bloodborne who we've known to have possessed these relics. Gurman, the first hunter, Mikolash from the School of Mensis, and Willem from the School of Bergenworth. Remember, Gurman went missing. This was the result of using an umbilical cord to establish contact with a powerful Great One called the Moon Presence. It's unclear exactly why Gurman used the umbilical cord. There's reason to believe that it was in an attempt to bring life to a lifelike doll that he made that resembles a student that he loved, Lady Maria, which is pretty messed up. The Moon Presence used Gurman to construct a place in the Dream Realm called the Hunter's Dream, a place that resembles the real-life Hunter's Workshop. We've talked about other realms and planes of existence already. The Hunter's Dream is one of those places, as well as the Nightmare Realm and, well, the real world. The main hunter, our character, first signed a strange contract at the beginning of the game, and after dying for the first time in Yharnam, wakes up to find himself in the Hunter's Dream, a place which he is now bound to. He's given the ability to project himself into the real world of Yharnam through the Hunter's Dream. With some guidance from Gurman, who's actually under control of the Moon Presence, you're instructed to go out and hunt beasts. Mikolash, head of the School of Mensis, also used an umbilical cord, only this time to gain an audience with an infant Great One named Murgo. It's referred to in the game as the Mensis Ritual, performed by Mikolash and a number of other School of Mensis scholars. However, this ritual didn't go exactly as planned. The ritual ripped the School of Mensis building into the Nightmare Realm, and Mikolash was left as the only survivor. And much like Gurman, this time Mikolash was the host, creating a new plane called the Nightmare of Mensis. Not much is known about Murgo, though there's good indication that Murgo was the child of a Great One and the Queen of the Tumerians, Yharnam. Again, we don't have too much info, but the Mensis ritual to summon Murgo is believed to be a large part of what's causing the chaos in the city of Yharnam. The Mensis ritual must be stopped, lest we all become beasts. It was the Mensis ritual which caused the Blood Moon to descend on Yharnam. Well, technically it didn't descend until after defeating Rom, who was blocking the ritual, but we're going to gloss over that in this video. The hunt ends when players venture into the Nightmare of Mensis and defeat Murgo's wet nurse, and retrieve the piece of umbilical cord, thus ending the Mensis ritual. With the hunt over and with Murgo no longer a threat, the purpose of the Hunter's Dream has been fulfilled. It seems that for whatever reason, the Moon Presence's motivation was to kill the child of another Great One. It's unsure exactly why that was, but maybe it's just a dick. Returning to the Hunter's Dream and talking to Gurman, he'll present you with 2 options. He can unbound you from the plane and send you back to the real world for good. If you refuse Gurman's offer, you instead fight Gurman, and if you're successful at defeating him, you then take his place as host of the Hunter's Dream and are forever bound to this plane. There is, however, a third hidden option. If the player manages to find and consume 3 parts of an umbilical cord, that's right, consume, after fighting Gurman, the moon presence will show itself, and the real final boss battle begins. As referenced and hinted at by Bergenworth scholars, 3 third chords. Hunt the great ones. Hunt the great ones. If the player manages to defeat the moon presence after consuming all 3 umbilical cords, the hunter then ascends and is reborn as an infant great one, the first human to ever do so. Thank you very much for watching. There's so much more to the Bloodborne universe. This is kind of like a little bit of a bare bones kind of overview of the world and the events of the game. And I wanted to take a look and do videos on a bunch of the other characters and side stories, but first I thought it would be beneficial to kind of put together an overview just so there's a little bit of context. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please click that like button. Apparently it helps my channel a lot, according to my YouTube coach. Anyways, thanks again for watching. Peace out.
Sliding my DMs and shit.
Slapping your DMs?
I said sliding, man.
They slapping.
People slide in, slap Billy's DMs.
You struggled with that. You tried so hard.
I'm so used to saying slide into the DMs.